Join Christina as she sits down with Karen Kimberley, therapist, hypnotherapist, and author of Thinking Like Magic, a powerful self-help book that blends CBT techniques with practical tools. In this fascinating conversation, Karen opens up about her early career, the influence of her mentor David Clutterbuck, and the unique experience of training with Richard Bandler, the co-creator of NLP. They explore the highs and hurdles of writing her book and share fresh insights on how AI is reshaping the world of coaching.
Where did you start out? What was your starting point in your work life?
Yeah, I wanted to be a journalist. I wrote a lot for the student magazine at Leeds University, and I went for an interview at the BBC, and I didn't have the right accent because I was very northern. And they said, if you carry on, you'll probably succeed. But I moved into publishing. I got a job in publishing, but in sales, in advertising and selling advertising in a semi-pornographic camera magazine, photographic magazine, as they were back then. And I became an ad manager, and I did quite enjoy it because I enjoyed seeing the whole of the way a publishing operation works. And then I moved into marketing and project management, sales promotion, and then communication and internal engagement, internal communication. So started out at Haymarket Publishing. So.
Quite an eclectic sort of thing to be doing, but journalism is really all about communication, I guess, and making sure that you're getting things across. So, looking back, who or what inspired you in that work? If you were, yeah.
In the general work that I did, or in
in the I suppose in the publishing way, in the journalism way, was there anybody that inspired you? Or
I actually interestingly met up with all of them after 30 years, and I can honestly say that it was a baptism of fire, because the way that publishing was back then was very sexist, very full on, and nothing really to inspire you. Perhaps the editor who died recently, George Hughes, was a force of nature. He was a real character. But I wasn't inspired to write there because I was in the business side of it.
Wow.
So I kind of suppressed that, and probably an inspiration to write might be when I worked at Item, where my mentor was Dr. David Clutterbuck, and he wrote and wrote and wrote, and we were not dissimilar in some ways in terms of quick thinking, and I haven't written anything like he's written, but he was a very prolific writer and quite an inspiration in that respect.
Yeah, I know him, and I've read some of his work, and in fact I've met him on occasion. So as you say, force of nature, really. So looking back over that life when you were doing those things, and then moving on to becoming a therapist and a trainer and working with organizations, what was the change for you that brought you into that world, which in my view is very different to the world of where you were in publishing?
Well, publishing was only for the first 5 years, and then for the next 15, 20 years, I was in lots of small businesses, and then started working with bigger corporates, and my specialist area became communication. So communication was a key field, and working with lots of clients who would be offloading really and kind of using me as a sounding board, and I was obviously empathetic enough to kind of give them help or listening and counseling, etc. So I thought maybe I should do something along these lines, because I'm being asked for help and I wasn't qualified. So back in the last century, 1998, I did a counseling course, just a very simple basic counseling course, but we did Gestalt therapy and quite heavy stuff in that. Got me interested. Then in 2000, I did NLP course, which was subsidized by my company, and really enjoyed that. Thought that I would hate it. It was 5 days with Bandler, Richard Bandler, Paul McKenna,
Oh, yeah.
and Michael Breen. You probably recognize that. A few people will have gone on those courses. And, everyone stood up and cheered Richard Bandler, who was the inventor. I thought, well, I should go with a founder, the person who's actually founded NLP. It's like going with Freud or something like that. Why would you choose a second, rate person? But at the end of the 5 days, I didn't want to leave, and I was a fan, and I was converted, and then it was quite hard after that experience to decide where to go next, because he had basically hypnotized us for 5 days, and I had enjoyed that part of it. But I thought, do I do a course in mentoring? Because I was mentoring young people for the Prince's Trust. Do I do a course in coaching? Do I do a course in further work in NLP, or do I look at hypnotherapy and psychotherapy? And I plumped for the last one, and that's what then led me into um, the current kind of career, if you like, the current iteration.
Yeah. And what was it, do you think, that brought you into that particular line? Because, I think lots and lots of people do these counseling courses because they somehow realize that their their role is more than just listening. They need to have some skills to be able to listen, which I imagine that you were hearing all sorts of things that you thought, my goodness, I can't deal with this. I don't have the skills. What do you think was the change from you doing that because you were interested in it and meeting Bandler, and I did the last training that Bandler and Grindler ever did together.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I have done some work with Richard Bandler as well.
Mm.
So I understand a lot about his trainings and the way that he trains. But what do you think it was about that um, catalyst, I guess, that caused you then to say, well, actually, I'm sort of going to change route, really?
Well, I wouldn't say that I changed route completely, and I still have my fingers in lots of pies. So, uh, and the gig economy, is quite a well-known term now, but probably in those days it was a bit unusual to do a few different things. But I've always been interested in variety and enjoyed variety. So I stayed working in the communication field for a very long time, and probably, and even now, I still do help with communication projects on occasion. And the coaching and the therapy just kind of grew up alongside what I was already doing. And I just took as many courses as I could, and I learnt as much as I could, and I got involved with the Association for Coaching, and got coaching qualifications, and then ended up, I'm a regional facilitator for the Association for Coaching. So we meet every month to develop CPD. So I help, practice
Yeah.
that aspect and improve our skills. And I remember being petrified of doing that originally, but and now I see young people coming along, and I can see how scary it is for them, and I remember how scary it is. But it's such a great thing to practice
Yeah.
coaching and therapy and keep your skills up. So it wasn't a decision. I often have seen my career as a series of stepping stones, and sometimes the stones are side by side, and I might hop from one to the other and then back again.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? How, different people go on different routes. I would say my route is very much like yours. Something comes along and I say, oh, that's interesting. I'll just go and do that. And I've no idea where it's going to go to or if it's going to go anywhere. And in
Yeah.
fact, it seems as though you've sort of chosen a similar kind of path. Oh, there's a stone. Well, let me step on that and see what happens.
Yeah.
And
Did
that's,
you do sculpture or something recently? Something weird? You just thought I'll try that. I
yeah,
thought, oh, what on earth was she doing now? I don't know what it was.
with ring making.
Ring making, that was it. Silversmithing. Yeah, amazing.
Yes. So yes. So that kind of, as I see it, your world began to widen out. So at what point did you think, you know what? I also want to write a book.
Um,
How did
I
how did that come about?
again, perhaps through a backdoor route. There's a book that I still haven't written, but I did a lot of work on my family history, and I went on the Anne Diamond BBC Berkshire show and talked a lot about that. And there was a huge amount of my family history that's really interesting. And my father kept saying, "You got to write a book about this, write a book." And English, I did English at university, and I think everyone expected me to write. And so I've always felt, that you kind of almost have to write a book, and it's part of your development, or, it improves your profile and credibility as a coach, consultant, whatever you're doing in business, really. Um, but I'd seen other people write books, and no disrespect to them that have spent lots of money producing them professionally and launching them, but I didn't want to spend a lot of money on writing a book and launching a book.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to be paid for my efforts. So being very materialistic there. But I think I just followed a link on LinkedIn, which was for a company called Book Boon. And they said we have a business library, which is global. And if you write a book, we will send you a template and you follow that template. And if it's bought by our readers, we will pay you every time someone reads it. So I thought, well, that sounds good. And I suppose the topic, I wanted to promote all the learning that I have about CBT, the cognitive behavioral therapy that I do. And yeah, mainly CBT, but mainly the power of your mind and how you can think like magic, which became the title of the book, Thinking Like Magic.
Yeah.
And it was, I think, one summer, I can't even remember when I published it now, within the last 5 years, that I just sat in the garden and wrote it in a week, um, and pulled together a lot of information that I already had. I can write really quickly, and it's a bit shocking that I haven't written anything else since. Oh no, well I have. I've written a draft of something else, which I'm having to change around. Um, so yeah, it was just a kind of business decision, um, more than following my a creative drive or anything like that. If
It,
I'm honest.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think that's why a lot of people write a book because, as you say, it give you some credibility as well. But you started off by saying that got very interested in your ancestry, and you had a very interesting history. So, how did that morph into you writing a book about magic?
Oh, well, not magic, but thinking like magic.
Thinking
Yeah,
about
yeah.
magic.
Well, it didn't. It's just it was, I suppose that is a possible book that's out there, the family history one, but that's quite complicated and a huge amount of material to bring together. And it's a different kind of book. It would be semi or a memoir or biographical, whatever genre family history is, and whether that would be made into a fictional novel or something like that. That wasn't related to
Mm.
what I do for work. And I love work. I love my
Yeah.
work as a therapist. So I wanted it to promote what I do as a therapist. So I wouldn't say it didn't morph at all. That other book is still possibly out there as a possibility at some point.
And I suppose there is a difference between writing, something about work and something that we know a lot about to actually starting to write fiction. Because the difference between fact and fiction or semi-biographical fact and fiction is a completely different
Yeah.
mindset or a completely different way of thinking, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, sort of what where you are now, if you were to sort of describe your work and your writing and everything, how would you encapsulate that and say, most people say, oh, well, I'm a this or I'm a that, or I'm, so many things, I'm a nothing, you know what I mean? Or I'm all of those things and that. Where would you say that you are in your career and where you're wanting to go?
Um, I wouldn't, I don't describe myself as an author apart from in my bio where it's just mentioned along with other things. Um, and I I've been searching for a literary agent again with the idea of being published
Mm,
and getting paid for being published. So I'm really at, the baby stages of trying to write or get published. Um, so I still, very much see myself as a therapist. I'm so busy and
yeah.
needed in the world that I work in, with anxious people, and there's lots of anxiety and lots of mental health problems around. So, um, why change what I'm really enjoying? Um, Often, sometimes when it quietens down in August, might be a time that I might, tackle the writing. But I still find uh, I don't have blocks in terms of writing. It's just finding the time and sitting down to do it. So it's just it's a motivation, slight motivation problem now and then.
Well, I mean, I also hear that that you've got at least one more book in you, maybe
Mm.
even more than that.
Mhm.
Once, and as said that the previous book you sat down and wrote it very, very quickly.
Mm.
I imagine that's because you know your subject very, very well, and that if you're sitting down to write something that you've got to do a bit more research or whatever,
Mm.
then it probably is a different process. Yeah. So.
Yeah. The second one I wrote quickly as well, but it has it's very confused about its genre. So you have to be very clear about what genre you're writing. And mine was confused between memoir, self-help, um,
Yeah.
several different genres actually. So I've got two books in one. So the next stage is to separate them out and
Yeah.
and kind of be very clear about which genre it is.
And what do you think that you need internally in order to do that? What is it that, would be the thing that inspired you to say, do you know what? These are things that, I really do believe will be beneficial and that people will be interested. But what is it that you think you need internally to do that?
I think the self-help kind of book and more of that self-help kind of book is easy to do because I can promote it to clients, I can promote it, and I know that it would be picked up or can be picked up by people who need it. Um, the other one would probably be more of a humorous kind of book, which might be of interest to some people. But that seems a bit of more of a vanity project, but it might actually still sell copies. I don't know. So what uh, I d I think I need time. I kind of the internal motivation is there to produce something because I enjoy the process of writing when I'm doing it, and quite happy to sit down and do it. The promotional aspect of it
Yeah, well,
is a different matter because the literary agents they really want people to be promoting on Instagram and having they work with people who have hundreds of thousands of followers, and I think there is room for older authors that perhaps work in a different way, but we'll see whether that works or
well,
not.
I mean, I've done some writing courses, and I think that's the interesting thing that now they expect you to, by the time the book goes to print, they need to know that they're going to make a profit.
Mm.
And that, as you say, means hundreds of thousands of people, which in and of itself is a job.
Hmm.
Actually get those people, you have to be writing enough interesting things about your book and sending little tidbits and offering things. I know the
Yeah.
theory of it, but I don't have the patience for any of it. Yeah, like, I think, no, no, that's not the role I want to play.
Mm,
So if you think about, sort of the work that you do that you love to do as a therapist and the work that you do as a writer,
mhm.
is there any crossover, do you think, of the two?
Well, definitely the first self-help book was all about the kind of therapy that I do, and basically was writing down a lot of the kind of the models or the theories and the tips, and definitely had my voice as a therapist in it. So,
Mm.
the kind of things that I say to clients in my sessions, they often can read that, in the book, and I felt that that would be quite nice for people who were, well, it might not, but people that I work with that could
Yeah.
be reminded of my messages in the book
Mm,
when
mm.
they're reading the book about therapy. Um, yeah, so there is a definite crossover.
Yeah, gosh. I mean, I think it's really interesting when people do things that I see as being quite different. There may have some similarities, but sitting down and writing a book is a very, singular, I
Mm,
suppose, activity.
mm,
Whereas when you're working with individuals, it's a twosome. But if you're running workshops, it's
mm,
actually, there's a completely different energy
mm.
focus that you need. So when you've got all those little strings to your bow, do you think there's any of those strings that you'll ever let go of, or do you want to carry on? I mean, I know you've said that
Mm.
some of it is changed. You're doing more individual work
Yeah.
than training.
Yeah.
Is that, do you think, where your focus is going to?
Yeah, I think so. And if you don't pursue that type of work, say the workshops, you don't get so much of it. And had some health challenges in the last few years, as you know, which make it difficult to hop on a plane and fly off to Italy and kind
Yeah.
of
It's difficult to hop into a car and get out of a car.
so so that means that, yeah, online workshops. Well, and I still do enjoy workshops, but I think there is a time limit to how long I will carry on doing workshops.
Yeah.
I might speak a bit more and do some talks or things like that, but really I do prefer that direct impact that you make with an individual and change their lives, and the thanks that you get, and the client the other day said that they would pay £1 million
Oh,
if they were able to do the thing that they couldn't do. So I said, "Are you going to pay me £1 million? And if I get you doing that in the next 2 weeks?" And sure enough, they did do what they
yeah.
really thought was worth £1 million. And, I got paid considerably less than that, but it was the value is in, doing something for somebody, that helping them to achieve something that's worth that amount in their life is, or saving somebody from suicidal intentions is,
Yeah.
how can you do anything almost more worthwhile than that, apart from actually
Yeah.
jumping in and saving someone from drowning, or being in a fire, or something like that. So all I do is sit in a room and talk to somebody, and that can make a massive difference to whether they live or not,
Yeah.
which, you know
Which, when you talk about that, it's like, that we sort of talk about life purpose and, what would you say that having said that, what would you say your life purpose is? I mean, that's really an inspiring thing that you just talked about, saving people's lives. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't put that on my bio, but and
I,
I and I don't always um I don't always succeed. I had two people on one day, and one who who both had suicidal intentions, and one um responded incredibly positively and was signed off about 4 weeks later, 5 weeks later, and another had got to the point that they were so broken down that they had to be go to another, go into hospital, basically. So, you've got to meet people at the right time as well. And, people with anxiety and depression, that is what inspires me, actually, because I've lived with, at close quarters with people who have that. I haven't had it. I've only had mild depression once or twice, which is through inactivity, but nothing as serious. So, that my life purpose is, I think, is to help people to live a happy life. And, if you're helping people, it makes you happy. So that, and it's most people, sorry, a lot of people don't find out what their purpose is. And, so I feel lucky to be in a role that I really enjoy and be able to help people.
And I think, that, I think it takes a very special person, special qualities to be able to work with people who, are thinking about suicide, thinking about ending their life. That takes a lot of courage, I guess, on your
Mm.
part. And I'm just, I sort of would like, to sort of bring the mood up a little bit, what I mean? Not that, help what you're doing is not bringing a mood down, but actually it's quite serious work. And I'm just wondering, what are the qualities that you need in order to do that kind of work, do you think?
Um, I mean, I work with huge numbers of different clients with different problems. It just happens that sometimes a couple of those cases come along that are much more serious. So I don't. It's not that I see people like that every day, which would be quite exhausting and difficult. So yeah, there is a phrase, isn't there? That as coaches, as therapists, it's a privilege to step into someone else's world and to be able to hold that space for them. So, having empathy is obviously a major part of it, but giving people hope and optimism and being able to or be quick thinking and find solutions, help them find solutions because, it isn't directive. It's directive in terms of the methodology, as you know, that we help people through certain techniques and ways of thinking that they've never thought about. The qualities, a good listener, and it was quite ironic that my partner sent me an article about AI and how AI, they reckon, can listen better than humans because it's not thinking of the next question. And actually, a client recently brought along a summary that they'd created with AI of what their problem was. So we could kind of cut out a load of time, and I said, well, we didn't cut out everything, but basically, she had a really good summary that she could give me. And I thought, oh, well, that's useful. But I did say, well, AI can't hand you a tissue. AI can't give you a hug. AI can't, sort of really give you the amount of empathy that a human being can. So,
And I mean, I don't know whether or not the AI that they had was in the format of a person, sort of what they call avatar, or whether or not it was actually just a written word, in which case people maybe say, well, I could get that out of a book, but
mm,
actually it's not about that. It's about the relationship. It's about
mm,
the connection. It's about the
yeah,
human being. I always say things like, being a witness sometimes is all that your client needs because
mm,
very well never ever have spoken those words to anybody
yeah,
else. So
yeah.
being a good
And yeah, and actually, as a hypnotherapist, which you would know, AI, I don't think has learnt to hypnotize people. And there are,
well, that's
hypnosis is or hypnotherapy is so powerful that, that has a massive impact and a massive effect. And I think that, I always say the combination of the logical thinking in and the conscious thinking in CBT kind of matched with the subconscious think, in hypnotherapy is a really good way of the brain kind of being able to kind of get to grips with whatever issue it is. So I think that it's actually not so much about the qualities that I bring, but the fact that, as an integrated therapist, you can bring so many different therapies to bear on whatever the issue might be.
Yeah. And I think that's probably the creative bit about our work, because when somebody walks into our office or we meet some, we never know what they're going to say, what they're going to bring. And of
Mm,
course, I expect you find the same. They come with something, well, I'm really bad at time management. And then you discover that actually there's something much deeper than that
mm,
behind it. So I think that's kind of for me the joy of this work, and the being able to hold people. So we've had a really interesting chat around bits and pieces. Is there anything that has come up for you that you've thought about that you haven't said that you'd like to say just as we're finishing off? You know what I mean?
yeah, I suppose what you just said about creativity in our world in therapy, the creative thinking and having to adapt and all the time kind of be thinking of new ideas or new ways of tackling things is obviously a creative process, and I don't particularly think of myself as doing that unless I get the clients to get a piece of paper out and start drawing or using your methodology that you have, the crystalline method, and actually talking officially about creativity. But I suppose that creativity is part and parcel of everything that
Yeah.
I do every day, sort of being able to think on your feet and um
Yeah. Well, and moving with the client as the client moves wherever they need to go to, and
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
think it's like, and probably we both know people who have a script and they start here, and you know what I mean, and that, but it
Mm,
sounds to me that you sort of are. When I was sort of doing my training, they called it rocking. It's not rocking. It's like you're just moving with
mm,
the way the client
yeah.
needs to go,
Okay.
really. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So thank you, Karen. I mean, it's really been lovely chatting to you. And I know you, but not very, very well. So
Mm.
finding out about you and hearing, your enthusiasm about everything you do actually has been really inspiring. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you.